Imagine you're in a forest at night, and you have the sudden feeling that you're not welcome. You're aware that you're trespassing, that you're in someone else's home after hours, and that someone is a creature you can't understand, but you're already too deep in the woods to leave. Hold the Dark is a 2018 film directed by Jeremy Saulnier and distributed as a Netflix original. It's based on a book of the same name by William Giraldi. I also quickly want to note that the cinematography is absolutely breathtaking. The command of light in a snowy landscape and the way the camera directs your eye and reveals information is masterfully done. You could watch this film for the eye candy alone, so shout out to Magnus Nordenhoff Junk for that one. I may have butchered that name, and I'm really sorry. This was a creepy movie, and the feeling it left me with was so specific, and that's why I want to talk about it. This is admittedly my first Saulnier film, as I haven't gotten around to seeing The Green Room or Blue Ruin, but just from reading the synopsis of those films, you can understand that this is not Saulnier's first film to talk about violence. And that really is what Hold the Dark is about. What is the difference between the violent instincts of a human heart versus that of a wolf? And how much do you reveal about yourself in the ways that you hide yourself? The film opens with a letter that a mother has written to the protagonist, a wolf expert named Russell, to come help her find and kill the wolf that killed her son.
I do not expect you to find my son alive, but you could find the wolf who took him. Come and kill it to help me.
But things get weird as soon as we arrive in her rural Alaskan town. There's gonna be some heavy spoilers from this point on. Also, I'm gonna put a big old trigger warning for child abuse and violence. After revealing that her son is actually the third child to be taken by wolves from this town, we learn that her husband is off fighting in the army, and that she is angry that he left her alone. Just looking at the almost dilapidated town on the outskirts of Alaska, we get a pretty clear picture of a place that is on its last legs. The mom, Medora, gives off a pretty weird vibe from the get-go.
Your husband in the village?
I didn't meet him anywhere. I knew him my whole life. I don't have a memory he isn't in. And he left me here with a sick child.
Well, the war.
Someone on the radio said it's not a real war.
No, it's real enough. People are dying.
He said he'd never leave me.
We get a pretty good idea that she has never left the area, saying that she's known her husband her entire life, that she's always been cold because the snow never melts there, and based on the fact that she's such a young mother. She and Russell return to her home, where they agree he'll set out to kill the wolf that took her son in the morning, but promptly after that, she goes to the couch he's sleeping on in the middle of the night wearing a wolf mask and literally nothing else. She takes Russell's hand in hers and gets him to strangle her, from which he pulls back, horrified. They don't really talk about this, ever. It never comes up again. But it's very important. It says a lot. I'll get to that. When Russell later goes out to hunt for the wolf, he sees a pack of wolves eating a pup. He reveals later that in times of hardship, packs of wolves may eat their young. Russell later returns to Medora's house to discover her bags packed, her car gone, she is nowhere to be seen, and then he discovers her son's body in the basement with bruises around his neck.
That girl knows evil.
This is just the beginning of the film, but in this we have almost all the information we need to figure out what this film is about. What is the difference between a human and a wolf? When Medora goes to Russell and urges him to strangle her, it makes perfect sense. She's asked him to come kill the wolf that took her boy, and she's presenting herself to him as that very wolf.
So you come to kill it? To kill the one that took him?
In times of hardship in a crumbling town with fewer and fewer resources, she killed her child to spare him and save herself. This creates the implication that the other missing children were also not taken by wolves, but instead murdered by their parents in times of hardship. The town is culling itself.
When I encountered the wolves, they were in the act of devouring one of their own. A pup. It's not uncommon at all. When resources are scarce or there are unnatural stresses, some of the young may be killed to preserve the group.
This is obviously an evil thing to do as a human being, but it raises the question of the line we draw between the natural world and our human society. It's incredibly obvious that as a group of social creatures, we do not kill our children, and anyone who does so is a bad person. But we don't apply these same rules to animals. Not only do wolves kill their children when times are hard, but literally rabbits do that. Most insects do that, and we don't call them evil for it. So it continues the question, where is the line drawn? Beyond that, the film is set in the fictional town of Kilat. While that's not a real place, Kilat is not a made-up word. Wikipedia quotes, in Inuit mythology, Kilat is an evil chthonic spirit who resembles a hairless dog. It is said to feast upon the dead and is sometimes seen as a harbinger of death. The wolf motif is further explored when we meet Medora's husband, Vern, while he's fighting with the American army in Falua. The first thing we ever see him do is fire a gun from the top of a tank at a car blocking the tank's path, and he doesn't even flinch. Following this, he sees a fellow soldier assaulting a local girl, and Vern has no hesitation in killing him. So the first thing we know about him is that he's stone cold, and he commits violence where his internal law permits. Shortly afterwards, Vern is shot in the neck and is sent home for his injuries. The focus on the neck for Medora, Vern, and their now dead son isn't an accident. In the wild, when a male wolf is set to attack, his mate will position her head at his neck. While it looks like cowering, what she's actually doing is acting as a defense for the most vulnerable spot on his body. Vern and Medora are in the situations they're in because they were separated. But it's too late, and now there's a problem they have to address. Vern returns home, and Medora is gone, obviously. The objective for the film has changed. Find Medora and arrest her before Vern finds her and kills her. Vern goes on a murder spree in an attempt to find her, becoming that very harbinger of death that the Kilat embodies. But on this murder trip, Vern adopts his own wooden wolf mask. This takes us to the second point. What do you reveal in the ways that you hide? This film shows you violence in a very different way than a Tarantino film, for example. Very little of it is actually shown on screen. Except for the shootout scene with the police, that was some very gratuitous violence. Ooh. Okay. We just get enough information to indicate what's happening, and our brain does the rest. We get it with a sound or with a quick cut. When confronting their crimes, Medora and Vern hide behind animal masks, revealing their true animal nature in their hiding. When sending out Russell to find the wolf, Medora hid her dead child in the deepest, darkest part of their home. To reveal the thing itself would distract us from the point. The film takes no pleasure in forcing you to watch gore, but instead asks you to understand motive. When Russell and Vern find Medora almost at the same time, it doesn't really go as expected. Vern begins to strangle Medora, again with the neck thing, but then she pushes off his wolf mask, reminding him of the last of his humanity. And then it becomes an almost happy reunion, or at very least a steamy one. But while he's angry with her for what she did, he doesn't seem to consider it unforgivable. He and Medora have chosen to leave their humanity behind and instead live in the forest as the animals they have irreversibly become. They justify violence by the laws of nature and can never go back. Later in the film, Russell and a police officer hypothesize that Medora killed her son to save him from darkness. And around all that, we can imagine she wanted to save her child from becoming an animal And from that darkness that Vern would inevitably incorporate into his life, Medora becomes an animal to save her child from the same fate.
Because you think it's the natural order.
The natural order doesn't warrant revenge. You're not what you think, Mrs. Sloan.
Russell, on the other hand, is the human witness to this town's descent. He spends the entire film trying to understand why Medora and Vern are acting the way that they are. The violence is too much for him. It's unforgivable and incomprehensible. While he was called to the scene of the crime because of his expertise on wolves, he can't recognize the same behavior in humans. No matter how much he claims to understand nature, he won't acknowledge humans as part of that nature and eventually ends up back in a modern hospital, finally out of the woods, so to speak. This is multi-layered. There's a lot of different things going on. I really have to applaud Saulnier on the way he made decisions in this film because everything felt very clear. There was follow-through on every plant. This is some masterful directing, and you can tell because the decisions are just so distinct and everything is so cohesive. I want to make sure I'm clear that I don't think killing your children is an acceptable action, no matter what hardship you're enduring, but for the sake of the film, it creates the landscape for the major questions. When did we decide that we are no longer animals? At what point can we excuse violence? And it's okay that we're not animals, and it's okay that we don't excuse violence, and it's okay if we can't understand it. Our protagonist isn't an animal, he's a man. And he's given the option to give that up. In the end, the film is saying that to choose violence is to sacrifice your very humanity and become an animal. Hey guys, so that was my first video. I'm really excited about this. I hope you liked it. The goal is to make these videos every other week where I reflect on a film that I really enjoyed, and I am really looking forward to seeing you next time. Let me know in the comments what your favorite films are that talk about the nature of violence. And hey, if you've seen the film, I'd love to know what you thought of it. Also, you know, I'm on YouTube now, so I, by law, have to ask you to like and subscribe. Okay, thanks. Bye.